Hi, and welcome to True Crime, a channel dedicated to the dark underworld of criminal activity carried out by gangsters, mobsters, cartel leaders, and others. Let's get started. In London, gang activity has long been an issue. The Kray Twins, the Richardson Gang, and Hoxton Mob have all existed in the past. Today, the capital is thought to be home to more than 200 gangs, including Molly Boys, ACG, and NPK. It is estimated that thousands of Londoners are involved in gang activity, which frequently results in violence. Murder, armed robbery, and brutal assaults are frequently gang-related crimes. But which gangs are the most feared? We'll list some of the gangland names that have come out of the criminal depths in London over the years, along with their origins. The Firm. The Cray Twins are arguably the most notorious gangsters in the history of London. Born on October 23, 1933, Ronnie and Reggie Kray's gang, the Firm, terrorized London in the 1950s and 1960s. They were involved in everything, including assaults, arson, armed robberies, protection gangs, and murder. Although they were criminals, the two managed to gain some level of notoriety because they owned West End nightclubs, where they mixed with the era's politicians and entertainers, appeared in TV interviews, and had their pictures taken by David Bailey. One of the final prisoners detained at the Tower of London was the Kray Twins, who were Bethnal Green natives. They were found guilty in 1969 and each received a life sentence. Ronnie suffered a heart attack on March 17, 1995, while he was a patient at Broadmoor Hospital. In August 2000, Reggie was granted mercy and released from prison. However, he passed away from bladder cancer over 9 weeks later. Guinishers. The Whitechapel-based gang that was led by Jack Comer, also known as Jack the Spot, was well known. It was given this moniker because, like many gangs of the time, its members were Jews. Morris Goldstein aka Moisha Blueball and Bernard Shack aka Sonny the Yank were two of Jack's closest associates in the protection racket underworld of the 1930s. The gang opposed the developing fascist movement in Britain during the 1930s and took part in the defending of London streets against the legendary March of Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascists on October 4, 1936, which became known as the Battle of Cable Street. Torture Gang. The Richardson Gang was another name for the gang, whose members were thought to be among of London's most cruel gangsters. The gang, which consisted mostly of Eddie Richardson, Charlie Richardson, and later Frankie Fraser, was an adversary of the Kray brothers. The brothers shared a Camberwell upbringing before terrorizing the city in the 1960s. This gruesome group is accused of employing pliers to extract teeth, bolt cutters to sever toes, 6-inch nails to nail victims to the ground, and electric shocks until the victim was rendered unconscious. Whippings, cigarette burns, and electric shocks were also used as forms of torture. Following an argument in Catford on the day of the 1966 World Cup final, Eddie and the rest of the gang were taken into custody. Each of the three received a 50-year prison sentence. Clerkwell Syndicate. Three brothers, Terry, Patrick Patsy, and Tommy Adam, who also go by the names of the Adams family, and the A-Team control the gang. According to the Sun reports, the group is believed to be responsible for at least 25 homicides and has built a fortune of £200 million through its deadly business of drug trafficking, robbery, extortion, and murder. The brothers were Islington natives, and the two-up, in which the shooter sat pillion on a motorbike, was their trademark hit. Even the 1991 murder of torture gang member Frankie, which was previously mentioned, was connected to the A-Team. Although Frankie survived being shot in the head outside a London nightclub, he never revealed the identity of the assaulter. One Mayfair businessman had so severe injuries that his nose and ear were left hanging off after losing the Adams £1.5 million in a disastrous trade. After a £10 million probe into his finances as a result of MI5 bugging his home, Terry, the gang's leader, was sentenced to 7 years in prison and ordered to pay £750,000 for money laundering in 2007. Hoxton Mob. The Hoxton Mob, sometimes known as the Hoxton Gang, was in fact situated in Soho and operated from 1918 to 1939. They struggled for control of racetracks and gambling clubs, so possibly they chose the name Hoxton in order to confuse the opposition. Around 30 gang members attacked a bookmaker and his clerk at the Lewes racecourse in June 1936 with hammers and knuckle dusters before police arrived. At least 16 of the gang members were found guilty and received sentences totaling more than 43 years in prison. The Sabinis. The southeast racetracks were controlled by this notorious Charles Derby, Sabini-led Italian mob, which had its headquarters in Clerkwell. Sabini was dubbed king of the racecourse gangs and was responsible for the early 20th century's domination over the southeast. They received a lot of assistance from other mafiosi who immigrated from Italy because they were an Italian mob. According to one rumor, Charles got into a brawl in 1920 at the Griffon Bar in Saffron Hill. He defeated a well-known enforcer for a South London gang who had insulted an Italian barman during the fight. He became well known in London as a protector of Italians and ladies as a result of the incident. Molly Boys. A modern-day gang is the Molly Boys. The gang got its name because many of the original members immigrated to Britain as young children from a war-torn Somalia. The Molly Boys are famous for their unyielding brutality, even by the gangland standards of dreadful London. Police said in 2018 they were earning up to £50,000 a week from drug sales. Walthamstow's Valentin Road, known as Britain's most dangerous street, due to a succession of violent crimes including fatal shootings and arson, is one of the Molly Boys' haunts. Children as young as 10 are said to work for the gang. The 50 members of Molly, who range in age from 14 to 24, no longer drive flashy cars, wear bandanas, or display gang colors because it draws too much attention. The street gang was also responsible for the murder of Jaden Moody, who was 14 years old. On January 8, 2018, 5 Molly Boys were driving a stolen Mercedes through Walthamstow in search of rivals to attack. Ayub Majulan, 19, and at least one other gang member exited the vehicle after running over Jaden, who was riding his moped, and started stabbing him as he lay on the ground. Majulan, who had been a heroin dealer for the gang since she was 14 years old, had been found guilty of the killing. Members of the Molly Boys were also responsible for the grisly murder of 20-year-old Joseph Williams Torres, who was killed in Walthamstow, East London, due to a case of mistaken identity. On March 14, 2018, Joseph Williams Torres was attacked while riding in a van with a buddy in Walthamstow. According to reports made to the Old Bailey, the 20-year-old was killed by mistake as a result of a turf battle between competing youngsters. Life sentences for his murder were given to Hamza ul Haq, 21, of Manor Park, Loic Nengies, 19, of Walthamstow, and a 16-year-old child. The ACG gang is thought to be responsible for a large number of shootings and stabbings in London. The gang, also known as Six, has its headquarters in Beckton, Newham. 4 CG gang members were sentenced to prison last year after holding a guy against his will and engaging in a brutal and sustained attack over a £10,000 debt. The victim, a man in his 30s, feared for his life while Olutomi Bayu, Sabir Rashid, Kevin Tunga, and Bruno Pereira subjected him to horrific violence over the course of many hours. Another gang member, Isaac Donko, was one of 5 individuals who kidnapped and abused a 16-year-old boy. Donko has served more than 23 years in prison. On the evening of August 2, 2018, Donko, 22, of Ixworth Place, Chelsea, and the 4 adolescents abducted the victim on Gordon Road in Barking. The victim received head and body blows before being told to get in the car. Once inside the vehicle, 2 plastic bags were placed over his head and fastened with an elastic band after a machete threat was made. Then, Donko took the car to one of the 14-year-old's residences. The victim was informed by Donko that the group was in possession of a gun and 2 knives. The victim endured a horrific encounter while being detained at the address for around 2 hours. Donko threatened to cut him up if he did not compel him to strip naked while filming it on his iPhone. The gang kicked him hard in the head, smacked him in the face, had him kneel, and beat him with a metal rod across his face, back, legs, and arms. His hair was also forcibly chopped with scissors. Donko attempted to scorch the victim's feet by pouring boiling water over them, but instead burned them severely. The sufferer attempted to take off his socks, but Donko forbade it. Additionally, Donko recorded the incidents on his phone while being kicked in the face, threatened with scissors, and forced to take in a cannabis joint. In order to gain his release, the victim had to call his parents and plead for £1,500. The victim was then told not to talk to the authorities and a bag was put back over his head. Not far from the location of his kidnapping, he was taken back outside to the car and freed. Donko of Ixworth Place in Chelsea received a sentence of 12.5 years in jail. The 4 adolescents received a total of 11 years in prison. NPK. The Northumberland Park and Haringey-based NPK and the Wood Green-based WGM have been at odds for years. According to reports, this has involved 4 murders, numerous gunfire, and stabbings. In January of this year, 4 NPK soldiers were each sentenced to 16 years in prison for the horrific machete murder of 19-year-old Kamali Gabadon Link of the WGM. All 17 defendants, Tyrell Graham, age 18, Shireen Cookhorn, age 21, Jaden O'Neill Cricklow, Shane Lyons, and Ajay Hamilton, were found guilty of the teen's murder. A minimum of 5 knives, including a machete and a small sword, a revolver, a shotgun, and 2 unidentified assailants were carried by the 5 murderers who were imprisoned. The men arrived at Lordship Lane, which is close to the View Cinema complex, where they discovered their victims, rival gang members who were also with 2 other people. That evening, Kamali was fatally stabbed, while another man was shot once and stabbed 8 times. The other victim is still alive, but her injuries will change her life. The Old Bailey was the scene of a fight between Graham, Cookhorn, O'Neill Cricklow, Lyons, and Hamilton as they were imprisoned earlier this year. In one of the most remarkable events, a man leaped over the barrier separating the public gallery and the courtroom, falling inside where he yelled, "I'll murder you," to the prosecutor before hitting a female police officer. Thank you for watching another amazing video from our true crime team. Like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned to our next real-life true crime video.